Democratic Alliance in the Northwest has elected Leon Basson as the party leader of the province. The party held its virtual provincial conference a short while ago. Leon was elected unopposed for the position. For the latest, we are joined by reporter Tebogo Phakedi. Tebogo, welcome to SA Today. The latest out there in the Northwest province, a lot expected with regards to the DA elections provincially anyway.
Most definitely, Tabi. So good afternoon to you and the viewers. You would remember that this Congress is quite important to the DA, especially a week after the by-elections, especially 2 weeks after the National Elective Conference. As you have rightfully stated there, Leon Basson was uncontested. However, his new deputy is Fredy Son Aguila. You would remember that Fredy Son Aguila is sitting as a representative of the DA in the legislature. You would remember that he was also the legal advisor of the Northwest Provincial Legislature. Fredy Son Aguila, thank you very much for joining us. You have just been elected as the newly Provincial Deputy Leader of the Democratic Alliance. Just give us your reaction and where to from now.
Thank you very much. Everything went well. The DA has never been this united. For people who've been saying a lot about the DA, when you look at the results and you look at the new leadership, it is representation of what we have been standing for. A united party, a united vision. This is what it shows. When you look at us, it's multicultural. It talks to each and every person. So as the DA now, we are going to be touching base with all our voters. Those that we have lost, we're going to go back and just listen to them as to where we went wrong. And obviously, we're going to come up with strategies. As you can see, that it's a balance of the experienced and the new ones to come up with new ways to say where to from here and how do we also gain new voters onto the ground. So it's exciting times. This was the first of its nature in terms of political parties. The DA, we always lead, obviously, in terms of technology and everything. We did it, and here we are. And look at the results. Look at the leadership. It's balanced. It's balanced. I don't see what anyone else can say about the party now. We are ready, and we are ready for 2021 united, and we're going to win this time.
That was Fredy Son Aguila, who's the newly elected Deputy Provincial Leader of the Democratic Alliance here in the province. Of course, touching base there on the public participation, that they are going to concentrate more on that. We did, of course, air the results live on air, SABC News. But however, for the benefit of viewers at home, I will just state there that the provincial chairperson of the Democratic Alliance is now Luan Sanders. And then his deputy, of course, there are 3 deputies. That is Erna Rosu and then Nkateko Mabunda. And of course, the first deputy chair is Don Van Zyl. But to get more in terms of the vision of the Democratic Alliance here in the province, we know, of course, they lost 2 seats just the last week's by-elections. Thank you very much, Leon. You were uncontested, of course. Let us just talk about the vision of the Democratic Alliance. Do you think there is a lot to change at this point?
Yes, I think the first thing that the DA needs to do in Northwest, we need to reconnect with our voters. Mm-hmm. We have lacked that in the previous by-elections, and we've lost. We've learned a lot out of the losses we've had. But we will reconnect with our voters. We will get back to our basics, the ABC of politics, with activism, branches and canvassing within the Northwest province.
Mm-hmm. I did read the mandate of the DA as you were coming for this elective Congress and realized that you are anticipating to amend the DA's constitution here in the province. If you can touch more on that, what is it that is going to change about the constitution?
Well, we just brought the Constitution in line with our federal Constitution, and Congress has taken a decision that from the next Congress we will no longer have 3 deputy chairpersons but only 1 deputy chairperson. We will also concentrate on municipalities and also committees within the municipalities. That's been taken up in our Constitution.
Mm-hmm. And then now, speaking of municipalities, we have, of course, seen the performance of several municipalities in the province. We've seen many of them being on section 139 of the Constitution. Of course, we speak more of the intervention and so forth. Would you say the DA has been playing a role in promoting good governance in these municipalities? As we would know, of course, you have representatives in the legislature.
Yes, I think, and I think the example is here in Potchefstroom with the JB Marks municipality, where we lay charges against the mayor, and we see what happens here, and that is very important. The DA has got to play a role where we make sure that we can clean up corruption within municipalities. People are suffering without water and electricity, bad services within Northwest, and we must make sure that we play our role to make sure that we get better service delivery to the people of this province.
Thank you very much. That was Leon Basson, who is the uncontested leader of the Democratic Alliance here in the province. Congratulations and thank you very much for joining us. I will just invite Professor Andrei Duvena, who is a political analyst. We've spoken earlier on, Prof. Thank you once again for joining us. But let us look at the results at some point. We see Fredy Son Aguila, who's quite been very active, now being the provincial deputy leader here in the province. Of course, Leon Basson is uncontested. He's now the leader of the DA in the province. If you look at this leadership, the list and the results, of course, what does this say?
Tebogo, to start with, a word of congratulations to the people winning the positions. I think if non-racialism is a principle, then we have seen election in accordance with non-racialism, which I believe is a central principle within this party and in a way representative, and I think that is a positive development. But if we analyze the Democratic Alliance as a party nationally, I think the party is facing major challenges. They are losing support and they are struggling with the concept of identity politics. If you put the Northwest province within the bigger framework of the Democratic Alliance, it is one of the provinces that are facing more challenges than the average one. So there will be huge pressure on the leadership of the Democratic Alliance in the province to take them forward. I think it is back to basics, as Leon Basson mentioned, the ABC of politics. There's a need to strategize, there's a need to reposition, because according to my political assessment, we are into a big reconfiguration of politics. We are entering a local government election. There will be a lot more coalition politics. Ipsos Markinor has indicated the ANC support base on only 50%, and we know about the conflict within that structures. So it's a very dynamic environment with major challenges but also big opportunities.
I assume that will be quite interesting to see, as we know that in most cases when you speak of coalition or when you speak of harm municipalities, in a way it is an advantage to the communities, where you'd see in most cases provision of service delivery be imposed, if I can use that word, because at this instance many community members are saying there's no service delivery. But when you see coalition, you get to see, well, government not having no choice but really to act up the fact that there is a coalition.
Tebogo, to be straightforward, if we look at municipalities in South Africa nationally, 80 to 90% of them are in serious trouble. And by far the majority of them are ANC-governed local structures. If we look at where the Democratic Alliance and other coalition groups manage, it was a lot better. We can only think about JB Marks under the leadership of Professor Annette Kombrink. It made a huge difference. So I am positive that coalition politics can assist us to deliver services in a better way. There is always, however, challenges when it comes to coalition politics, and that is the ethos and spirit of working together, of taking decisions together. But our political future is going to be heavily relying on coalition, on shared values. And I think in a way the Democratic Alliance is well positioned to play a significant role in this regard.
Now, looking at all these three spheres, you cannot divorce them. And I assume for DA to do better nationally, it would have to do better locally and, of course, provincially. Now, when we speak of this upcoming local government elections, what is the common thing that we would have to see between these three spheres, particularly when we look at the DA?
Well, to start with, the DA is in the process of repositioning itself on literally all levels. They have a new leadership nationally. They are repositioning themselves to the right of the political center. And that is basically to safeguard the traditional constituency, they lost about between 250 and 300,000 votes, majority coming from the Afrikaner white community, and they would like to try and consolidate it. But at the same time, the challenge is to build bridges to other communities, like, for example, the moderate black communities, the so-called colored communities, and the Indian communities. And that should be a national strategy. I think that we are going to see more of the federal principle within the Democratic Alliance, working with autonomy, working with the concept of minimum government. I think that will be their strategy. They will be developmental in nature, but at this point in time, as an ordinary citizen, I do not have a lot of clarity about their strategic vision. And I think there's a big need to clarify the strategic vision to get lower levels, provincial and local structures to mobilize accordingly.
I can see the weather is not on our side, but last question. We see the dynamics of South African politics. It's mostly reactional. We get to see reactional politics as opposed to people looking at policies when you look at different political parties and so forth. Do you anticipate that happening?
Yes, without any doubt, there are two ways people are voting, which is very dominant since 1994, but is becoming even more prominent. The one is identity politics. If you made an analysis of elections, you will find to a large extent that it is becoming a racial census, and parties connected to certain racial groups are functioning. The other thing that is very important is the thing where people benefit from. People are not voting in many cases according to principle, but according to what is in it for me. And that is the big challenge for the ANC at the moment. We are at the fiscal cliff. Financially, we are running into trouble. Now they are coming up with a lot of rhetoric in order to get buy-in from the voters. And we have seen strong polarization. And the big challenge for the Democratic Alliance will be to position themselves with identity politics. Because if they are only going to use the liberal individual principle, they are going to run into trouble. My understanding is in the Western Cape, there's a party called the Kaapse Partij. They already had a voters base of more than 500,000 people, according to their leader Andrei Duvena. And if that is the case, we are talking about major shifts. And I think the leadership in the DA on national, provincial and local levels should manage this changing environment. It's all about to adapt to a changing environment, strategize and going forward.
Oh, thank you very much. That was Professor Andrei Duvena, who is the political analyst. Of course, he speaks more on the reactional politics. He speaks more on empathy politics as opposed to policies and so forth. But of course, he talks about this just after the Democratic Alliance here in the Northwest, Thabiso, has elected its new provincial leadership, and we see Leon Basson leading, and of course his deputy being Fredy Son Aguila, among other leadership members. This really begs a question of what is it that DA is going to do to make sure that it improves, especially at the ground level, where we saw really the last week's by-elections, DA losing to ANC and to Freedom Front Plus at 2 wards, and of course we saw again in 2019 losing again to the Freedom Front Plus, saying a lot has to be done, Thabiso, for the DA to perhaps win certain wards in the next year's local government elections. That's what we have today, seeing the DA hosting its virtual elective congress here in the Northwest. Thabiso, back to you in studio.
Tebogo Phakedi, thank you very much indeed. Great, insightful reporting.